What are these food dyes actually doing to kids especially?
Yeah, well, if you look at the ingredients for Fruit Loops 20 years ago, it was very, very different than it is today. And today we use chemicals in Fruit Loops that are banned in virtually every country in the world. So if you buy Fruit Loops today in Canada, it is made with vegetable dyes. If you buy it here in the United States, it's made with petroleum synthetics. And as I said in that clip, nobody wants to eat petroleum. When we went to meet with the food companies, I said to my staff, if they want to eat petroleum, they should put it in their food themselves at home. They shouldn't be feeding it to Americans who, without their knowledge, without their consent. And today we announced that we're going to get it out of the food.
This is something that I think everybody can get behind. You'd be surprised how much poison is in our food. You know what canola oil was technically supposed to be used for? Machinery, like oiling machinery.
It actually stands for Canada Oil.
It's ridiculous that it's in almost every single food product. I mean, I go to the grocery store and I want some granola for my yogurt, and there's canola oil in the granola? It doesn't make any sense how we got here. And these dyes, I mean, there's no wonder why autism rates have spiked 10 times over the last 10, 20 years. We want something organic. We want just all real ingredients. And thank God RFK Jr. is putting an end to it. And this administration as a whole is too.
All right, guys, good Wednesday to you. We've made it over halfway through the work week. We got a great discussion coming your way on the media. So we've got 3 of the top women right now in the briefing room headed your way. Natalie Winters with Steve Bannon's War Room, Monica Page with Turning Point, and Reagan Reese, our good friend at the Daily Caller, are going to tell us what changes have been happening in the briefing room, what it's like going against the legacy media and their portrayal of how they do their jobs in there. It is absolutely unbelievable. Plus, President, he's on the move. I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about in just a second. But before we get to that, guys, you guys know that I've been on my own personal MAGA wellness journey last couple years. And a lot of the things that I've done to change what I take, what I eat, what I've gotten out of. One of the things that I've realized, though, as a guy with bad knees, bad hips, is it's not just what you put in your body, it's what you wear on your body. And I have had a game changer with Gravity Defyer shoes. They are built on work, hard grit, determination. But whether you're running, walking, playing pickleball, and I do all the above, I've got 3 different pairs of Gravity Defyer shoes. These help hardworking Americans. They've got this cushion in them that's called Verso Technology. Same stuff that they make on trampolines. It's literally when you step into a pair of Gravity Defyer shoes, trust me, it's like nothing you've ever dealt with before. There's a level of cushioning and support and stability that I don't get in any other shoe right now. They've got that patented shock absorption that you feel right off the bat when you step in. It works as hard as you do. So whether you're walking, running, going to the gym, playing pickleball, it's unbelievable. And you will see the change in what you do right away. I cannot tell you how much these things have made a difference for me. Here's the best part right now. Listeners to the show get an exclusive 50% off any order of $120 or more. You just have to text Sean, spelled the Irish way, SEAN, to 91888. So text Sean to 91888 to claim your deal. That's half of what the shoes normally cost. And as I said, I'm a guy who has 3 pairs. And by the way, I wear wide. So if that's something that you also deal with, Gravity Defyer's got it all. And you get a 60-day trial-free, risk-free trial of your Gravity Fire shoes. So you literally have nothing to lose. So text Sean to 91888 to try Gravity Defyer shoes. And I'll tell you, they'll send you a link. You can go shopping. They've got great styles. They're for different things. Like I said, I started with just the ones that I go walking in. Then I wanted ones to be able to go jogging and running because I need the support there as well. I love these things. Check it out. Go to Sean, text Sean, SEAN, to 91888, and you'll talk about it. Well, speaking of that MAGA journey, you guys know this. And I've been traveling this week. You guys know, if you watch the morning meeting, you see I'm traveling. I now carry my Beam Dream Powder wherever I go. I cannot sleep without it. And I've learned the lessons of trying to skip a night, and I end up having a horrible night's sleep. I have started taking Dreams Beam Powder every single night because it's puts me to sleep right off the bat. 30 minutes after I take a scoop, I put it in some water, swirl it around, put it in the microwave, 30, 35 seconds. It tastes great. It's so unbelievable. It is proudly founded in America, which is another great reason to love it. These people who founded Beam are built on great American values, integrity, hard work. It's science back. And I'm telling you, you will have a totally different sleep. Like I fall asleep, I stay asleep, I wake up feeling refreshed. And on the nights that I forget, I can tell right off the bat. I don't fall asleep. I'm restless at night. My focus on energy came back when I started taking this, and we're waking up and I'm ready to hit the day going. Beam has already improved 17.5 million nights sleep across America, professionals, athletes. Once you try it, you will say, I'm so glad you showed me this, because it's got all of that stuff that you probably took a pill for in the past: melatonin, magnesium, L-sheet, reishi. I mean, all of it. And the flavors, you can't beat them. So right now, listeners and watchers of the show get a 40% Patriot discount just by signing up. So go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Then you enter code Spicer for 40% off. I'm telling you, all the flavors: cocoa, cinnamon, the brownie. I love that one. And they even have a peppermint. So support a great American company. Invest in your own health and wellness by going to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for up to 40% off. All right, without further ado, I want to break down everything that's happening in the media right now ahead of the White House Correspondents' dinner with our good friend Reagan Reese of the Daily Caller, Natalie Winters of Bannon's War Room, and Monica Pace Luisi of Turning Point USA. Ladies, welcome to the show. Good to see you. I mean, what a week. The women of MAGA on the influencer reporting size are a scent. I mean, this story that came out in Politico this week, the first thing I got to ask, that photo that we'll put on the screen here was Photoshopped, wasn't it? I mean, you guys weren't all standing together. Is that fair?
The Politico, the lead article in the picture, that was real.
That was real?
Yeah.
It looked like
news, Sean. You should be able to spot fake news better.
I know. Well, that's why I asked. It was Politico and fake news tend to go together. So, but first, I got to just ask. I mean, it seems to me, Natalie, that these guys, this is how they wrote of it. Most members of the new media have adopted Trump's hostile relationship to the mainstream media, but Winters goes further than that in making most her. Like, she's accused other White House reporters of taking part in CIA psyops. Like, so what is that? I mean, just, I want to put it in your words. What do you think of the rest of the folks that are there now that you've gotten to meet some of them and be around them on a daily basis?
Well, look, I always thought these people were pseudo-intellectuals, so I don't think I ever internally trumped them up to be anything that they weren't. But nonetheless, I think the corporate structures and just broader media ecosystem that they work for is something that has a lot of intellectual firepower and heavyweight behind them in terms of being the forefront of what we have always sort of deemed the color revolution against Trump, right? Depicting him as an autocrat so they can somehow oppose a democratically elected president, because it's hard to square those values when all you preach is how much you care about democracy. So I think that's probably why the three of us, though I know you guys have been in the briefing room longer than I have, enjoy being there, because we have a front row seat to what is the dying legacy media. But because right Democrats lost the House, the Senate, the presidency, I think the media has therefore become an increasingly relevant, if not the paramount, maybe second only to the activist judges, vertical or theater of war through which they're trying to oppose President Trump. So that's where my CIA psyop and color revolution critique emanates from. They never explain it in detail. They just try to make me look crazy. But I think the irony of it is that most American people probably understand what I'm saying.
You know, Monica, the thing is, you worked for Newsmax, you worked at OAN, and now you're kind of in this new role for Turning Point USA that hasn't had a seat before, hasn't had a presence there before. What do you feel like when you're in that briefing room? Because you've had the experience of working for other news outlets. Now you're representing Turning Point. I mean, how are you viewed, and how do you view the others in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Natalie really put it best in her interview with CNN, saying that, are we real journalists? Yes, we are, because the guys we left the news up to in the previous administration weren't reporting on Joe Biden's cognitive decline and failed the American people as a whole. So now it's our jobs to really bring the true transparency and the reality of it all to the American people in a raw, unfiltered way. So when you see legacy media outlets looking at us as maybe some kind of threat to them, I think that they're absolutely right, because we're posing this as a group of people who can be relied on, who can be trusted to bring the real truth. I see these media outlets as quickly dying. I don't see them really lasting any longer than maybe the first or second term of this or year of this administration. We saw how they reported on President Trump during his first term. Now we're here in the second term, and it's clear President Trump is not going to put up with what we saw back in 2016. So when they see people like us, I think that they fear for their jobs. I think that we're definitely looking towards another big shakeup in the coming month or two. I think that's something that the press secretary is keen on doing. And, I love being here. I love seeing, the mainstream media kind of look at us like, what are these people doing here? But in the reality of it, I love that the American people can trust people like us for the truth and for the real facts and the hard facts of what's really happening in the ins and outs of the White House.
Reagan, going to this political story again, it says, without dedicated seats of their own, a group of about a dozen new media reporters have taken to gathering in the quote unquote conservative corner, as some reporters call it, along the far wall of the briefing room near the quote new media seat that Trump's press secretary Caroline Leavitt has sent aside for a rotating cast of alternative outlets and conservative influencers. Reagan Reese, you're in a very interesting spot because the Daily Caller has had a seat for a while, and yet you guys represent the sort of the right side of the thing. So where do you guys fit into this equation? What is it like for you? Because you're not establishment by no means, but yet you guys have gotten a seat. You've, by virtue of the audience and the size and scope of the Daily Caller, where do you fit into the equation?
Yeah, I'm in a really interesting position right now. And we've had this seat for a long time. There have been White House correspondents that have come before me of, different political ideologies at the Daily Caller, Caitlin Collins, Sagar, Shelby Talcott, who have all gone and made an interesting name for themselves and are, now still in the White House with me. And so I think that's what has set us up to have a seat in the briefing room. We've also been a part of this White House pool. It puts me in interesting.
Yesterday, Reagan, didn't you? You were the White House pooler.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Does anyone, I read your reports. I get the pool reports. Well done.
Thank you.
But does anyone say, oh, it's Reagan Reese or the Daily Caller, or do they treat you like the bona fide journalist that you are?
So this is interesting. I actually have seen kind of people pay attention to me now, essentially, in the WHCA. We are a part of the WHCA. Monica's a part of the WHCA.
Association.
Yes, most of these, new media outlets are a part of this, White House group. And before, under the Biden administration, we weren't getting called on. Being on pool really meant nothing because President Biden would barely come out and interact with the press. I was just ignored. I never spoke to the legacy media outlets. But ever since the Trump administration took over and Caroline Leavitt has started calling on us, these pool opportunities mean that you get to ask a question of the president. And sometimes you're one of those only reporters in the room in the Oval Office that get to ask those questions of the president. I've noticed that the legacy media has suddenly wanted to talk to me. They start introducing themselves to me while we're in line for the bathroom. They've taken the time to email me and tell me that they like my questions. And right now, I'm not entirely sure how I'm perceiving it. But I do think part of it is they kind of see us as maybe they can use us as this token conservative to help push through their complaints about the shakeup in the White House briefing room, which, by the way, we are all for the fact that we have new media on the sidelines that are getting to ask on the side of the briefing room that are getting to ask all these new questions because that is how Americans are consuming the news. They're consuming it through social media, through podcasts. They're not watching cable television anymore. And no one in that room was representing, about half of the country for the last 4 years of the Biden administration. And that was incredibly infuriating to me that, I was the minority in that room last year. I never got the opportunity to really ask questions on behalf of the conservatives in the country. And so, that's how it is for me right now. I think there's going to be more drama in the coming weeks, in the coming months. It's not going to go away.
Natalie, the thing that was interesting about that story to me that Politico did was there's a lot of discussion of your appearance, what you wear, things that in a traditional sense would have been called sexist. So if any of you guys had written that story, I think somebody would have said, wow, that was a very sexist story. And yet they had no problem going after, you and some of the other women who cover the White House, not based on your reporting, but on your personality, on your appearance. I found that. Did you view it the same way, or was it just sort of like, whatever?
Well, it's definitely whatever. By now, I'm used to it. I think since my first day there, I've been receiving all these attacks. But I think the best dynamic through which I sort of conceptualize all this is it's very, I think, reminiscent of like a Thucydides trap, right? You have a rising power that is the new media, and you have a dying old guard that is the legacy media, and they don't know how to handle their descent in both viewership and relevance, but also credibility. And I think that it's very interesting when you sort of juxtapose, right, the ascent of new media, which I think there's a weird inherent conflation there with new media being right wing, right? With, for example, Axios or Semaphore still comprising some of that new media critique, but they always sort of, I think, straw man the argument and make it seem like it's the most MAGA of the MAGA outlets. But I think the most important thing is sort of what, you guys were getting at, which is the idea that for how long this group of, elitist credentialed institutions and media outlets get to dictate what the discourse is in American politics when they represent, 0.01% of the population. And frankly, they have not learned their lesson. I think the Kilmar Garcia situation, right, the Maryland man hoax, is a perfect illustrative example of that, right? The American people don't want to know about a, triple threat criminal, wife beating, whatever, the whole gamut, illegal alien, what his human rights were when he was on a, deportation flight. The American people want to know how the border is being secured, if it's being secured, how we can get the mass deportation numbers up, what we're doing to reform legal immigration. That's why the issue of Springfield and the H-1B debate became so intense and so palpable, because we're never allowed to have those discussions, right? And the only time that the legacy media will dare to even touch the issue of immigration is to try to get a gotcha question or dunk on President Trump. And it's very apparent that that's still what they're trying to do with the Maryland man stuff. But I think that the sort of hypocritical layer to it, which is I think where more of the outrage is derived from. So if they want to impugn me for what I wear, have at it. I don't feel the need to wear, blazers or dress super professionally to dupe the American people into believing my stories. They'll speak for themselves. But it's just quite hypocritical, right? The same new media that lectures our audience for being nativists, for saying, hey, maybe I don't want the government to mass import a bunch of foreign workers and depress my wages. They literally can't handle the addition of like 10 new media members in their briefing room. They don't report on an invasion of 10 million illegal aliens, right? But 10 new media reporters in their sacred briefing room that's protected by walls, and you have to have ID to get in, which I've been told is racist. So there's just layers of hypocrisy. And that's why they attack my clothes, because they don't want to engage with what I actually say. But I'm never going to wear the ill-fitting pantsuits. I believe I've said that multiple times. I will always wear dresses and skirts. But if that's what they want to attack me on, have at it. Enjoy your plummeting viewership.
Monica, it's interesting because there's this belief. I agree with you guys. After what they have done to gaslight the American people on key issues, whether it's the Abrego Garcia issue right now, which is he's a family man from Maryland, for goodness sake, or the Russia hoax, the Steele dossier, the Hunter Biden laptop, and let me go on, to them to lecture people like the three of you and the rest of the folks in that story. The funny part about it is, number one, I will tell you, when I was in the White House, I used to say some of the toughest stories that I dealt with were coming from the likes of Breitbart, the Daily Caller. Like, I didn't get a pass by any of these guys. Monica, do you think that your job, as portrayed by Politico and others, is to buttress them or to ask issues that aren't getting issued? Like, what do you think your role is in the briefing room?
I'm asking the questions on the behalf of the American people and what American people really want to know. They don't want to know about, these certain topics that maybe New York Times or CNN thinks are important. I'm going to ask what everyday people think is important to them. I mean, you think of an everyday American person living in middle America, when they can't afford their groceries under the Biden administration, or they're worrying about boys on their, daughter's sports teams. I think that's really the important questions we should be asking. And there should be a standard to that. And it's not only Politico. I mean, it's also the New York Times that really came after my question in the briefing room, which thought that I was echoing right-wing opinions and right-wing talking points, when a simple Google search will show that the preface to my question, I mean, I asked.
What was the question?
I asked simply, there was not one single Democrat senator that voted in favor of keeping men out of women's sports. And, what does the White House, what kind of standard does that set for American people? What does the White House have to say about that? And the New York Times took that preface of that question, that not one single Democrat senator voted against, and said this was a right-wing talking point. A simple Google search will show that not a single Democrat senator voted in favor of keeping men out of women's sports. So the fact that they chose that to really attack me on, also, by the way, Turning Point is a 501c3. We're not far right. We're technically not supposed to be politically biased, which I think is also very funny. It just goes to show true colors from the left wing and even from the mainstream media. I'm there to ask questions of everyday Americans. Our audience is typically college-age students who are maybe worried about whether they'll be able to afford basic groceries or even afford to buy a home, or, aspire to achieve all those amazing accomplishments after they graduate college. Those are our audiences, and I'm trying to ask questions on behalf of them and just the common sense issues that everyday people care about. So I feel like I'm doing a great job at trying to ask those questions. I really want to ask this week about, that $5,000 baby bonus that President Trump wants to help all new mothers, not uterus owners, by the way, all new mothers who after delivery, to help American families, get married and have children. These are the questions that people want to know about. Let's highlight some of those accomplishments. And of course, the legacy media just doesn't like it. And that's okay, because it's clear that we are the new wave of media. And so far, I think we're having a great response from not only here at the White House, and with the Trump administration, but also with just everyday Americans that tune in.
Reagan, we mentioned you guys at the Daily Caller have a seat in the briefing room. Caroline Levitt added that new media seat yesterday. Tim Pool of Timcast held the seat. I want to play for the audience what he asked and then ask you how that went over. Take a listen.
Many of the news organizations that are represented in this room have marched in lockstep on false narratives, such as the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now what's being called the Maryland Man hoax, where an MS-13 gang member adjudicated by two different judges, I believe, is just simply being referred to as a Maryland Man over and over again. Now, in an effort from the White House to expand access to new companies, you've created this new media seat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, following this expansion, you've had numerous outlets disparage the companies that you've had sit here, as well as the reporters. I'm wondering if you could comment on that unprofessional behavior, as well as elaborate if there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure. Well, we certainly welcome diverse viewpoints in this room, which is one of the reasons we have you in here, and there's many new faces in this room in comparison to the previous administrations. We want to welcome all viewpoints into this room. We welcome unbiased journalists who really care about the truth and the facts and the accuracy, and you rightfully pointed out the Maryland Man story, which I, from this podium, when The Atlantic published it, on that very first day, I came to this podium and said, this is wrong. The press in this room have this story wrong, and we have seen more and more evidence come to the table that we have had all along. We were always right. The president was always on the right side of this issue to deport this illegal criminal from our community. And it is despicable to see the media continue to refer to this individual as someone who is just a peaceful man living his life in Maryland. This was and always has been an illegal criminal, an MS-13 gang member, and a designated foreign terrorist. And the administration maintains our position to deport these individuals from our community. So thank you for being here, Tim. It's great to see you.
So Reagan, first, how did that question go? I mean, those guys must not have liked getting called out. But secondly, I know that she chose to answer, Caroline, that is, to answer the question about Abrego Garcia and that specific line about being a family man from Maryland. But I think that Tim Pool was getting at a much bigger issue here, which is that these people, and you guys have brought this up, they don't have a ton of credibility, and yet they don't face a ton of accountability. So first, how did the question go over? And then secondly, what is the injection of all of these other people done to the briefing room in terms of holding them accountable or not?
Yeah, well, looking at that clip, Sean, you start to see heads pop up. Like they're all typing on their laptops and their heads pop up and like, oh my gosh, this guy's taking a shot at us. I'm yet to hear, sometimes you hear those scoffs in the room, but I'm yet to hear like a real outrage. I know that Mary Margaret Olohan kind of had a back and forth with NBC White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell, who used to be the WHCA president, about when Saagar was in the new media seat. I think she had a problem with the fact that Caroline called Saagar new media. And she, contested that or whatever. But
Wait.
for
So
the most
explain. Like,
yes.
I want to make sure I get this. Like, Kelly O'Donnell of NBC went after Mary Margaret, or Mary Margaret asked her to comment on it.
So I guess when Caroline introduced Sagar, she called him new media, and Kelly, from Mary Margaret's accounts, like mumbled something under her breath. And you can see Caroline in this clip say, "Excuse me," because Caroline can hear it. Kelly doesn't say anything else. Caroline moves on. Mary Margaret ends up tweeting about it and says it looks like she had, a problem here. And I know that they ended up speaking afterwards about that interaction. I'll keep that conversation personal between the two of them. But, just things like that is what you're seeing in the briefing room. Eugene Daniels, he's the president of the WHCA. He sent out a statement a while back.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Monica, is there something going on right there at the White House?
I think President Trump is coming down the driveway on the north lawn here. Do you mind if I take you guys with me? Is that
I
like a
apologize. I
thing?
don't mean to jump into Reagan.
No,
but
you're good.
I see
Can
everybody.
I flip this camera? Oh, wait, that
Yeah,
doesn't work. Okay, let's try and see if I could take you guys with me here.
We've got some breaking. This is live.
I don't know if you can see him.
What is he just walking down the driveway?
Yeah, I believe he is just walking, checking out, surveying the grounds. Everyone's kind of, as you can see here, gathered on the north lawn here, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, President Trump, I don't know if you can see him. He's with a group of people.
Can you see him from your angle right now?
Yes.
And is he just looking at bushes and trees and shrubbery, or?
I think he's just checking out. He's right by the fountain.
That's so funny.
The funny thing is I watched him do this at hotel properties where he just wants to like go examine. I was in the Oval Office the other day. Like I can just see him saying like, let's go walk the grounds and I'm going to point out things. So is there Park Service folks with him that you can see,
yes.
Monica?
Yep.
Okay.
I believe he's with a group of Park Service people and a couple Secret Service agents. Yep, there he is.
So Sean, you think he just wants to go admire things? That's what he's doing right now?
Awesome. They brought him up some issue with the grounds and he said, well, let's go look at it. That's very Trump, instead of just being told. By the way, Monica, if you want to tell him that you're on the show with us right now and have him come over, I have no problem with that. All right, we're going to break out of the show for just a second. I think Monica has the president making some comments. Here we go.
And other presidents, frankly, but under Biden, it got really worse. China got out of control. We're losing $1 trillion a year. Trillion, not a billion, not a billion. The country that's ripped off by every country in the world. Thank you.
All right, that was really cool. Thanks to Monica. Now back to the show. Reagan, I know. Let's just get back to this for a second because I think the issue that I have as we see all these reporters run off to chase Trump is so the bottom line that you're getting at is that the WHCA, the White House Correspondents Association, led by Eugene Daniels, what are they? I mean, they seemingly should be in favor of more media. That's what they claim they're for. They celebrate the First Amendment, and yet what is their position on the addition of so many new voices?
CNN read a statement in the package they put out today about new media from Eugene, and he said that his position is that, in order for the White House to be covered correctly, it needs to be covered by experienced, fair, and balanced journalists. And personally, I don't believe that anyone can be unbiased. We should all be upfront about
that guy,
where our bias is laid.
Eugene Daniels is basically a Kamala Harris spokesperson, and he wants to talk about unfair. So they put that really?
Yeah. And, when I look at the WHCA, I know Eugene Daniels put out a statement when all the shakeup was first happening at the top of the year, and it was public to the WHCA. And one of the WHCA members responded publicly to everyone and said, no disrespect, but why weren't we ready for this? And I think with that specific reporter, he and I probably disagree on many things and stand on opposite sides of the aisle. But the question of why wasn't the WHCA ready for the fact that the practices that they have, the way they treat the media, the new media, the way they are failing to adjust to the way the media environment is changing is out of date. They should have been ready for this. They should have known this is coming. And so it's only going to get worse for them. both in their network ratings, in their job security, but also in covering the White House. If they don't understand that the way that the Americans are consuming the media is just changing, and that is a fact. And you just have to be humble and look inside as a journalist and say, okay, what can I do now? Do I need to get on Twitter a little bit more? Is it Instagram Reels? Is it TikToks, etc.? That's, just the name of the game, and expanding and understanding how to get Americans their news. And they can't seem to grasp that. And that, I think, is going to make the WHCA less and less relevant and cause problems for all of these people in the long run. So the way that they're fighting this is it's not wise, in my opinion, just looking, how the media landscape is changing.
So this is the White House Correspondents' dinner weekend. This is a big weekend in D.C. where D-list, C-list celebrities come into town. Everybody tries to get their selfies so they can post them on Instagram. There's a series of parties. Natalie Winters, Steve Bannon's War Room and Raheem. I don't think I'm giving away anything. But they're hosting an alternative event Saturday night. Is the goal to sort of compete with them, just to host an alternative event? Like why Substack is hosting an alternative event Saturday night as well. It seems like the pieces, is this the end of the White House Correspondents' Dinner as we've known it in the past?
I mean, if it's a competition, there's only one, network and institution that's undergoing mass layoffs and restructurings and firings. War Room is hiring, and I think ever ascended. So I definitely think we win that competition. But yeah, we're throwing, I think, sort of a counter programming, not a dinner, just a party called the Uninvited. I actually honestly am trying, and I think I actually have an invite, believe it or not, to the actual dinner, which is funny. I may be doxing myself. You guys know War, we love to get our hands dirty and be amidst the legacy media. So I may make an appearance there. We shall see.
Wait, you may go to the actual dinner?
Yes.
Okay, can I ask, Monica, do you have any interest in actually going to the dinner, or will you be going to any of these alternative events?
Absolutely not. If I was invited to an alternative event, maybe, but I have no desire to go to the dinner at all.
Reagan, what about you guys? The Daily Caller, I know you guys might have a seat, but I know talking to Tucker back in the day, he's always said they never felt like there was a need to buy a table at the dinner.
I didn't go last year. I'm definitely not going this year.
Is this the end of the dinner, do you think? I mean, I think they got rid of the comedian. I don't know what other person they have.
Well, it's certainly a disaster for them this year. I mean, President Trump's not going, which is really no surprise. Caroline Leavitt's not going. I don't think that's a surprise either. But Amber Ruffin, the anti-Trump comedian chosen for this event, she's called the president a toddler with his pants pulled down, a murderer, and then President Trump, and then Eugene Daniels made the decision to say, no, actually, we're going to pull her from this event. And that was after she said she didn't want President Trump to come, that she was going to be biased and only attack one side of the event. And so I think just the PR disaster around her and what Eugene Daniels had to do to kind of remedy that is enough to sink at least this year's dinner. And I think it's not looking good for future programmings. If this is the foot that we're starting off on.
Natalie, do you guys, have you tried, or do you have any interest in joining the White House Correspondents Association, or would your goal be to help be part of an alternative association?
Well, you may be familiar with my attempts to join the National Press Club.
Wait, which, by the way, that you got rejected. I don't understand.
Denied. I thought they could have used my, $30 in dues a month, since everyone there is like losing their jobs and they've all been fired. But apparently they did not want my money or my presence. They rejected me, saying that I did not meet the qualifications as a White House correspondent, co-host of probably one of the largest MAGA podcasts, and long-time journalist who's broken many exclusive stories. But I did not make the cut. I would say good riddance. But the other point too, I would make on all of this idea, right, that it's President Trump who has some like robust new media initiative that is, North Korean sycophantic in its style, which frankly, I think dovetails quite nicely with the color revolution. I think depiction of President Trump as this, foreign aspiring autocrat and dictator, because in order to do that, you have to go after, the free press, the idea of free press, right? Oh, it's state-controlled media, it's state-funded propaganda. This is nothing more than just, them freaking out because they're losing narrative dominance, right? That's essentially what this all boils down to. But I think the more interesting point on all of this is that Joe Biden himself had his own version of a new media initiative, and it was the massive censorship of the American people. It was government funded, it was government subsidized, it worked in conjunction with media outlets and with the tech platforms. And not a single question was asked about it in the briefing room. In fact, the only questions that were asked by reporters about this whole situation, which DNI Tulsi Gabbard just declassified, was essentially, what are you guys doing to censor misinformation? So they purposely didn't report on it. They were in on it. And I think that the American people would take this version of new media, not just because it's actually catering to a majority of Americans. We're not even talking about like 20-30% of viewership. MSNBC gets like 10,000 views. Your podcast gets that in 5 minutes, right? Like, so I don't really understand what metric or what leg they're standing on by acting like, oh, well, we're the elitists, we're the institutionalists. But I think if you broaden out that critique, it's essentially the Biden regime on repeat. What do I mean by that? All these Harvard Kennedy School educated elites, these Ivy League educated, foreign policy experts that we have to, trust the experts. And it's President Trump who, how many times have you heard, is going to make us look like a fool on the world stage? Well, it's actually his advisors who don't necessarily have that Ivy League pedigree. They weren't all fellows with the Brookings Institution or CSIS or the Carnegie Endowment. They're actually the ones who are getting results on the world stage. So all these people who went to, journalism school, and because they work at the Times and they have a byline there, they think that that makes them superior to us. It's like, really, what did Jake Sullivan accomplish despite his, Harvard and Yale education? And I went to Chicago, so I'm not dunking on higher ed, but they're so out of touch. But the issue is that these people have never once been called out. And that's why you're watching in real time a panic and a meltdown over our presence being there, because they truly don't know what to do with us. And I think that's the most interesting facet of all the coverage that we've been getting. Like, they don't even know how to cover us. New media has been around forever. And by the way, in my Politico, the segment about me, they got half of the details about me wrong. They said that I've only co-hosted War Room for a few months, that the first time I was ever on the show was when Steve went to prison. That's not even true. And not that I'm the huge deal, but if you actually understand any about the media landscape, you would know, you know what I'm saying? So they're not very good at their jobs. And even they did a recent New York Times piece on me, and they got some of the biographical stuff wrong too. And I'm like, if I did that, I would be accused of spreading misinformation. They would say my press pass needs to be revoked. I literally wasn't allowed to join the National Press Club, but they do the most basic stuff wrong. And they're still hailed as oh, we know what we're doing. We're the experts in the room. It's no, you're not. You're pseudo-intellectuals. So sorry to trauma dump on your podcast, but these people impugn me all the time, so I have to give it back to them.
No, I love it. Thank you for being with us. Reagan, I want to follow up with you, though, specifically on Pete Hegseth. There's a lot of stories about Pete, and I know Natalie's got to go, so I just want to follow up with you on this because there's a lot of attacks coming Pete Hegseth's way, right? And the funny thing is, when I look at a story, a lot of times what I look first at is the byline, right? So the people that are attacking Pete Hegseth right now are White House reporters, not necessarily Pentagon reporters. Caroline Leavitt calling out NPR, saying that it's a fake news story, that there's clearly that there was some attempt to find a replacement for Hegseth. What are you hearing inside the White House in terms of Hegseth's standing?
That's interesting. Also, looking at the NPR story, if I read it correctly, it was single sourced, which that's also something I look at as a journalist when I'm reading these stories, is I'm looking at, who are they sourcing? And a lot of times it's anonymous, but once you start to understand who the big players are within the government, you can kind of figure out who's leaking, who's talking, it all starts to, it's like a puzzle. And so that was single sourced, and I'm not exactly sure who that would be, but I think that's it's wild to run with some accusation like that, that's so large, that is, and just single source it like that. It reminds me of this story of his West Point acceptance that came out right before he was, to be voted on by the Senate to be confirmed. It was they ran with this story, ProPublica ran with the story that he, was not accepted into West Point and that he had lied. And all they had was, this one sentence email from a person they'd spoken to at West Point. And I think that things like that should be, if you're an American, you should be skeptical of things that you see that are one source. You should really be, everyone should have a media class that helps them understand how to read these stories. And so I tend to believe right now that Hegseth is okay. I think that President Trump, similar to what we saw with Mike Waltz in the previous Signal Gate, is that I don't think he wants to give the left a scalp that easily. And Hegseth has been the cabinet official who is the most embattled. And so I do think for now that Hegseth is okay. But it definitely, that growing pressure, we know how Trump is affected by, bad press. We know how he's affected by people talking. And so, if Hegseth can get his ducks in a row, I think he'll be okay. But it's the drama around the Pentagon is not good. And I did a story last week. There's a growing war going on within the State Department between Trump loyalists and Senate loyalists, and how to put Trump's agenda into the State Department. And they're battling over that. And so if these continue to bubble up, these wars, these fights, these leaks, I think we're going to see a firing at some point.
Interesting. Hey, Monica, anything big going on there? President done looking at shrubbery?
Yes, I'm so sorry about the abrupt exit, but the president was actually just on the North Lawn looking at putting in a flagpole, taking out maybe a tree or two. He's putting in a brand new flagpole on the North Lawn. I believe the flag is going to come in around a week or so, and they're going to start installing a brand new, beautiful, big flagpole here on the North Lawn. He actually went to the Palm Room doors, which is right by the press briefing doors to enter, and he gaggled for, I'd say, about 3 minutes on all things tariffs with China, on all things with trade and the UK and the EU. And then, of course, he was asked about that beautiful flagpole. So we can expect maybe some construction on the North Lawn maybe in the next week or so. So stay tuned. But yeah, that was very unexpected. Sean, as you know, anything can happen here at the White House.
No, very unexpected. and thank you for bringing that to us live. That was awesome. I do want to bring up another story that caught my eye yesterday. RFK bans these comes out with FDA Commissioner McCary. I want to play you a clip of what he had to say on red dyes, because I was fascinated by this. Take a listen.
What are these food dyes actually doing to kids especially?
Yeah, well, if you look at the ingredients for Fruit Loops 20 years ago, it was very, very different than it is today. And today we use chemicals in Fruit Loops that are banned in virtually every country in the world. So if you buy Fruit Loops today in Canada, it is made with vegetable dyes. If you buy it here in the United States, it's made with petroleum synthetics. And as I said in that clip, nobody wants to eat petroleum. So when we went to meet with the food companies, I said to my staff, if they want to eat petroleum, they should put it in their food themselves at home. They shouldn't be feeding it to Americans who, without their knowledge, without their consent. And today we announced that we're going to get it out of the food. So there are 9 dyes, Jesse. 2 of them we're going to ban immediately, orange bee and red dye 2. We're going to accelerate the removal of red dye 3. So we're going to bring it down to under a year. And the other 6 dyes, within 18 months, we hope to get them out of all the food.
Monica, here's my question for you. This was a big, big deal for the MAGA movement. Robert Kennedy, the secretary there, following through on a commitment that President Trump made that he brought to the forefront. Why didn't this get more attention?
It's a great question. And I don't know why there would ever be any pushback from the left involving this measure. I mean, this is something that I think everybody can get behind. You'd be surprised how much poison is in our food. You know what canola oil was technically supposed to be used for? Machinery, like oiling machinery.
It actually stands for Canada Oil.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous that it's in almost every single food product. I mean, I go to the grocery store and I want some granola for my yogurt, and there's canola oil in the granola. Like, it doesn't make any sense how we got here. And these dyes, I mean, there's no wonder why autism rates have spiked 10 times over the last 10, 20 years. There's something to this. And I think that RFK Jr.'s movement to make America healthy again, to get all this crap out of our food, is something that I think everybody can get behind. We didn't sign up for this when we purchased our food. We want something organic. We want just all real ingredients. And thank God RFK Jr. is putting an end to it. And this administration as a whole is too.
Reagan, another big announcement that didn't get a ton of attention, Linda McMahon on student loans. I want to play for you what she had to say about student loans, because I think that you guys really do, talk to a younger audience. I don't know how this is going over. So listen to McMahon talking about student loans.
In case you missed it, the Department of Education announced that on May 5th, we will restart collections of student loans in default. The federal student loan portfolio stands at nearly $1.7 trillion, and only 4 in 10 student borrowers are in repayment. Unlike the previous administration, who made false promises and pushed an illegal student loan bailout, we will not force American taxpayers to take on the debts that are not theirs. There's no such thing as forgiveness, just shifting the payment burden from one party to another. Borrowers should pay back the debts they take on. Please visit studentaid.gov for more information on student loan repayment options.
So, Reagan, how is this going over with young people who, for the last several years, basically gotten off the hook paying the loans that they have taken out?
I haven't seen mass outrage yet, but if I know anything from covering the Biden administration, this was something young people feel very passionately about. And it was something they were very concerned about when, the student loan forgiveness portal would go down and they weren't able to get their forgiveness. That was a massive problem for young people. And so I do expect there to be backlash to this once probably it's covered a little bit more. The concept of, you have to accept responsibility for the fact that you chose to make a massive financial decision and take out all this money, and now you need to pay for it and you can't push it off on somebody else, is a very basic concept that I think hopefully these students should have learned in college. I myself have student loans, but I'm not in debt to the federal government. I'm in debt to Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College doesn't take any federal money from the government. So when it came to taking out student loans, the school itself had a program where I could take out student loans from Hillsdale College. And they have been really great in working with me on a fixed interest rate, on a payment plan. And I think that's a really responsible way for children, to take out loans. Yes.
Right. Now the student, Monica, real quick in 30 seconds, Turning Point USA obviously represents a big group of these people. Is Turning Point got a position on this?
Yeah, I mean, they are firmly standing behind that. If you take out money in a loan, it's your responsibility to pay it back. I have a very good girlfriend of mine who has been trying to make her payments on her student loans under the Biden administration, and they were just sitting in limbo for months. She's been making $5,000 in increments, $5,000, and the money's just sitting in this pool in her account, and it's not going towards repaying any of those loans. So that was under the Biden administration. So I'm hoping that her and others are finding some relief with this new administration, of course.
All right. Thank you guys for being with us. Monica, I appreciate you giving us those live updates with President Trump out there on the driveway. I'll be interested to hear how you guys do this weekend, whether the events. We'll have you back soon to talk about how the White House Correspondents' Dinner weekend went with you all. Thank you guys for being with us. A great panel discussion tomorrow. Steve Cortez, Batya Ungar Sargon, and Jen Pellegrino are going to join us. We'll break down so much more that's happening, including what's going on in Ukraine and the latest on tariffs. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Remember to sign up at channelsplicer.com for my latest newsletter. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.